Hi everybody, it's your human anatomy and physiology teacher here, Mr. Poser. Today we are going to be starting probably the most complex, well not probably, definitely the most complex, and maybe the most important organ system within the entire body. And that's the nervous system. The nervous system really controls everything. It tells your body what to do. It's your seat of consciousness. It what makes you you. It's what makes you human. It's what allows us to change the planet and do things that no other animal or any kind of species on Earth has ever done before. It's really incredible, particularly your brain. All right, so your brain is really distinctly what makes you human. You know, we all fall into the category of living things, of Earth life, right? We're all, metabolized. We all have DNA. We all reproduce, so on and so forth. So we really are under the same umbrella of life, and we're not really separated from everybody else. That includes all the single-celled organisms, bacteria, plants, all the different other types of animals, everything ranging from bugs to fish to birds. Okay, we're all under that same umbrella. Okay, but really what makes us distinguished from the rest of life is just how complicated our nervous system is, particularly the brain. Like I said, there's 100 billion neurons within your brain. All right, 100 billion is quite a number to wrap your mind around, right? So it's like a million neurons. Insane. And that's just how many cells are just in your brain, right? That doesn't even account for the rest of the nerves throughout your what we call the peripheral nervous system and in the spinal cord. Okay, so what really makes us us is our nervous system. Okay, and in order for us to wrap our minds around this, because your brain is learning about itself right now, or at least I hope it is. And we're going to talk about what exactly learning is too. But in order to get our minds around that, okay, we got to really start with the basics of the nervous system, which is what I'm hoping to do in this video. All right, so we're going to talk about the general characteristics of the nervous system, the types of cells that we can find in it, and we're going to talk about how we organize the nervous system and then the functions of those different organizations of the nervous system. All right, let's get started. Enough chitter chatter. All right, here we go. The general characteristics of the nervous system, it's made up of two types of cells. So the aforementioned neurons, which you have 100 billion of in your brain, and what are called neuroglia. Neurons are the main cells in the nervous system. They're nerve cells, and they react to physical and chemical changes. They send electrical signals called action potentials, and sometimes called graded potentials, from one nerve to the next, or from one nerve from a sensory organ to a nerve, or from a nerve to an effector organ, like a muscle or something like that. Okay, so they're your body's main form of communication within itself, and these messages travel like that, fraction of a second. Okay, it's honestly incredible, and I'm gonna get geeked out again about this, so I apologize in advance. But yeah, that's the main cell of the nervous system. And in order to support those main cells, because they do a lot, neurons hog a lot of ATP, they're amitotic, they can't divide for themselves, they need a lot of support, they have a very important job to do. They're supported by a group of cells called neuroglia, and there's lots of different kinds of neuroglia. But very generally, neuroglia are cells that support the neurons. They kind of provide it with a proper chemical environment. They make sure messages are transmitted faster. They provide it with fuel for metabolism, that kind of thing. All right, so neuroglia and neurons are our main two types of cells in the nervous system. So what does the nervous system do? If we were to boil it down and make it as simple as possible, we could really break it down into three main categories, or three main functions here. All right, the first is sensory input. Your nervous system is responsible for sensing things in the internal environment or in the external environment. It monitors and senses changes inside and outside of the body. All right, so this kind of calls back a little bit to feedback loops from the beginning of the year. Anyway, so sensory organs like, say, your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your fingertips, all sorts of stuff, they are able to pick up a stimulus, and through the action of what we call an afferent neuron, Okay? That stimulus is able to be transmitted as a message from an afferent neuron over to what we call the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. And what happens in the brain and the spinal cord is something called integration, which is our second main function, which is the processing and interpreting of sensory input to make a decision about it. All right, so the sensory nervous system picks up some information from the outside or from the inside. It sends a signal to your brain, and your brain decides what to do about it. All right, and sometimes it's your spinal cord if we're talking about a reflex arc. Okay, so your reflex, like when the doctor takes that little mallet thing to your knee and goes bling, and then your knee jerks up, right? So that's a reflex. Anyway, so the central nervous system integrates that message, and what does it do then? Well, it sends another message through the action of what we call an efferent neuron over to an effector, so an efferent to an effector. And that causes a motor output, which is a response that activates effector organs. All right, so the brain and the spinal cord will send a message to an effector organ, something that can cause a change in response to the stimulus. So yeah, it's kind of calling back to that negative feedback loop that we studied at the beginning of the year. All right, so if we were to boil down the functions in the nervous system, there's a ton, but these are the main three. All right, we're very, very obviously simplifying it. Okay, so let's organize the nervous system. We can't necessarily organize it like, say, the digestive system and other organ systems that are in here, because they're very compartmentalized, and there's like membranes and cavities that separate out each one from the other, and that's all very nice and convenient. But the nervous system isn't necessarily organized in that way. But we organize it in order for us to better understand it. These first two, are pretty distinguishable anatomically, but the rest of them, well, you'll see. All right, so the first two categories for how we can organize the nervous system, and I'm gonna show you a flow chart later on. The main two groups of the nervous system are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, the CNS and the PNS. The CNS it occupies the dorsal cavity. Okay, so that means your cranial cavity and your vertebral cavity. It's your brain and your spinal cord. It's the integrating and command center, just like we looked at on the previous page. All right, and the central nervous system communicates, it picks up messages from and sends messages to the peripheral nervous system, which is all the other nerves spread out throughout your body. All right, so if we're taking a look at this picture here, here's the central nervous system. It's in the center, hence the name, and all the other nerves that are branching off of the spinal cord, those are what we call the peripheral nervous system. So there's nerves, which are bundles of axons, which are a part of a nerve cell, and they act as communication lines, sending electrical signals from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. It's pretty incredible. All right, so the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, there's not really any other divisions of the central nervous system besides the fact that it's the spinal cord and the brain. So the rest of these divisions that we're going to be talking about are the subdivisions of the PNS, or the peripheral nervous system. All right, so the sensory or the afferent division is going to be the part of the peripheral nervous system, the nerves that are going to be directing impulses from the skin, muscles, and joints, and the organs to the central nervous system, right? So this is what we looked at before. The sensory or the afferent division is going to be picking up signals from inside or outside, all right, and sending them to the central nervous system. And the efferent, or the motor division, directs impulses from the central nervous system to the effector organs and the muscles. All right, so this is all kind of review. We've already talked about this a little bit, and this picture down here was once again showing us, okay, sensory receptor. Okay, there's input done by the, what would this be, the afferent division, sending it to the brain and spinal cord. It's integrated, and motor output through the efferent division, and nerves are sending messages to tell that muscle what to do. All right, so that's the first two divisions of the peripheral nervous system. Now we can divide the motor division, okay, so that that part of the nervous system that's sending a message from the central nervous system to the effectors. We can divide that into two different categories, and they're called the somatic and autonomic. All right, so the somatic nervous system involves voluntary movement of skeletal muscles. So we talked about the different types of muscle tissue in our last unit on the muscular system. So we know that skeletal muscle needs to be told what to do by the nervous system. And the part of the nervous system that does tell that muscle what to do, it's called the somatic nervous system. All right, so that's causing voluntary movement. What I'm doing with my masseter and my buccinator and my diaphragm and my larynx right now in order to make these sounds is being done by the somatic nervous system. All right, and the other division of said motor division is the autonomic nervous system, which involves involuntary movement of smoother cardiac muscle and glands. All right, so glands are bundles of epithelial cells that are specialized for secreting one or more types of chemicals or hormones that are delivered around your body, right? They are told what to do by the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so it happens automatically. Same with smoothing cardiac muscles. So take a look at this picture. Somatic nervous system. Spinal cord sends a message through a somatic motor neuron, uses acetylcholine and causes the contraction of skeletal muscle. This is a little different, right? Spinal cord sends a message through what we call a preganglionic neuron. You don't have to know this. Through the actions of autonomic motor neurons, and sends, it'll cause the contraction of smoother cardiac muscle or stimulation or inhibition of glandular secretion. So it'll tell glands to stop secreting a chemical or to start secreting a chemical. All right. Now we can divide the autonomic nervous system into two more categories. So we're going to have a flow chart of this. I'm going to show you in a little bit to simplify it. All right. But if we were to divide the peripheral, we could divide it into motor and sensory. If we were to divide that, we could divide the motor into autonomic and somatic. Okay, and now we can divide autonomic into two more categories, and those are sympathetic and parasympathetic. So the sympathetic nervous system, its job is to mobilize the body for activity, and it's what is known as the fight or flight. All right, so a bear is attacking you in the woods, or you have a big test coming up, or your boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with you. That's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system. It's going to cause stress, and that stress is designed to get you ready for some action. So that's going to cause your, it has it over here. It's going to dilate your pupils. It's going to accelerate your heart rate. It's going to inhibit digestion and urination. It's going to increase your blood pressure, all sorts of stuff to get you ready for some kind of threatening situation. All right, even if it's not necessarily threatening, your sympathetic nervous system is still activated, and that's where stress comes from. Everybody, that's stress. All right, and parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of the sympathetic, where it conserves energy and it promotes rest, and it's what we call the rest and digest. So instead of fight or flight, we got rest and digest. So it's going to do the opposite. It's going to slow your heart rate. It's going to stimulate. Digestion. And it's going to lower your blood pressure, so on and so forth. All right, because when you're about to fight or run for your life, digestion isn't really a huge deal. But when you're chilling, it's fine. All right. So this is where we'll end up. This is that diagram that I was going to show you. Here's our main two divisions of the nervous system. They communicate with each other, hence these two, arrows going opposite ways. The sensory nervous system the sensory division is going to pick up signals from the sense organs, send them to the peripheral nervous system. They're part of the peripheral nervous systems. Send that message to the central nervous system. Central nervous system is going to send messages back out to the motor division. So they're going to be somatic or autonomic. And if it's autonomic, it could be parasympathetic or sympathetic. Rest and digest or fight or flight. Okay, that is it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and we will see you next time.